Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a gloomy day today here in suburban Chicago. The cloud cover is flat and gray. Looks sort of like a swash of paint, like it is a consistent color from one end of the sky to the other. No contours of clouds, just gray and gloomy. Blech. It's also chillier than almost every day so far. I mean, we had a couple days that were a cold snap earlier that got actually cold. Of course, I grew up in the U.S. state of Minnesota, which is north of Illinois a ways. I grew up with it being much colder in the winter than it is here in Illinois. So this is chilly, but not downright cold. This is also warmer than most years. Most years in January it is in the 10s or even below that, whereas it's 24 degrees Fahrenheit right now, which is pretty warm by January standards. Nonetheless, it does feel chilly, so if I make sniffling noises, there's your reason. I was a bit of a loss at what to talk about today. The board gaming landscape is paused for the holidays, and it's just starting to ramp up again. I actually was kind of dredging the bottom of my podcast feed, so I was waiting for new things to populate. I have had a couple new podcasts show up. I'm working my way through Rahdo's latest omnibus. His Rahdo Talks Through podcast is pretty enjoyable, but holy cow, it's like 3 hours usually. I'm trying to decide if I should do an episode about Tabletop Simulator or not. I probably have to go back and look and see if I actually talked about it. I know I've shared my limited views on it, but it might be interesting to think about the intellectual property issue regarding Tabletop Simulator and my generally agreeing with Rahdo persona or stance, but ultimately I feel a bit like his approach is a little too stringent. But what I thought I would talk about today is a little bit of hopefulness, looking forward to the new year. I'm trying not to do too many of the 2021 type episodes until I get into season 4 of the podcast, rather than at the end of season 3. I guess it doesn't really matter. You are listening here in early January. It's not as if I'm somehow going back in time and posting these in December, but whatever. I thought I would do a little looking ahead. Yeah, I hope it goes without saying that I am dismayed and heartbroken over the attempted insurrection here in the United States. Makes me very sad. Okay, on to board games. I thought I would talk today about the 10 for 10 project that my family is pursuing. As you'll recall, the last couple of years, we have done, this is my fourth year pursuing a 10 by 10 or something equivalent. Although last year, as I've mentioned a couple times, we tried for a 5 by 20 and it went very poorly. This year we're going back to the 10 for 10, and I thought I would talk about, I know I've told you what games are on our 10 for 10 before, but I haven't really talked about what they are or what I expect to get out of the experience of playing them 10 times. So that's what I want to talk about today, my hopes, my wishes, my dreams for the 10 for 10 list this year. I thought I would, so the way that we did it, my family is a household of 4, my wife and I and my son, who's 12, and my daughter, who's 15. By the way, just got her learner's permit. So I'm sure you'll get to hear about teenage driving sometime in the next year. So each of those 3 other people picked 2 of the games on our list, and I picked 4 because I play a lot more games than they do, so it made sense for me to pick more of the games on the list. What I thought I'd do is talk about each person's pick and what I'm expecting we'll get out of it or the experience of it. We'll start with my son. So my son's always had this rocky experience on his 10 for 10 because he usually isn't quite sure what to pick. Being the youngest, he often has an appetite for different games than the rest of us do. I think that's sort of frustrating for him. Often the games he likes best, my wife doesn't really like at all. And so then I'll play them with him, but he really wants to play games with mom, and some of the games she likes, but often the things that he finds enjoyable about games are the things she finds least exciting about games. So it's nice when we do have a crossover. And one of the big crossovers is his pick this year, and that's Gloomhaven, Our whole family really likes Gloomhaven. As I've mentioned a number of times, we got 51 plays of the core box in last year. We did go in for Frosthaven as well, so we've got plenty of Gloomhaven type stuff coming down the line. But right now, the big focus is Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I did pick this up last summer. I managed to get it from Target in that early era when it was only available at Target, which is kind of funny because then it sat on my shelf for 6 months, but whatever. So my son decided he wanted us to jump into that. My daughter said she would join, which was nice because she got kind of tired of regular Gloomhaven after she retired her Vermling character and picked up another one that just wasn't as fun for her. So this time around, she is playing the Demolitionist and thoroughly enjoying it. So we decided to start Jaws of the Lion. We've played 2 games of it so far. The first 2 games we're playing using the introductory materials just because the game doesn't... I know Isaac apparently released some sort of... Isaac Childress, the designer, released some sort of guide for playing the game if you already know how to play Gloomhaven, how to play the game on full mode, even in those beginning missions. But we thought we would just get back into it by playing the beginning missions as written in the book, which is okay. It makes them pretty simple. But even already on the second game, we each started to get some of our really cool cards that resulted in some awesome plays. And I think we're definitely going to be able to really enjoy the missions as we go along. It'll be interesting to see once we get into the regular game if playing on normal makes sense or if we need to go up to hard. We've been playing on normal so far and we just breezed through. Very little effort required. So, but we're not through the tutorial missions, which are the first 5 of the 25 in the box. I've no doubt that we're going to make the 10 for 10 part on Gloomhaven. In fact, we've already played twice this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually cleared all 25 this year. But that all just depends on a variety of factors. The other game that my son picked is his first lesson in waiting for a Kickstarter. I believe it's a YouTube channel that he enjoys watching called The Odd Ones Out, which I think is a cartoon. I don't really know. They had a Kickstarter for a card game that they made called Cafe Chaos, which my son was very enthusiastic about, and we secretly backed for him on Kickstarter. I bet you can tell that when they backed it, or when they had the game on Kickstarter in like August, they said they were delivering by Christmas. And in my head, I said, oh no, they are not. And guess who was right? Yeah, so they haven't delivered yet. So we gave my son like an elaborate postcard that said, hey, this game is on the way. We don't know when it'll come, but when it does, it's yours. And he's very excited. I caught him checking the box a couple times. I'm like, what are you looking for, bud? He goes, oh, the Cafe Chaos. I'm like, as far as I know, it hasn't shipped yet. We've got a while. And I sort of encouraged him to think about the idea that he should just not plan on that being a thing that will come until he gets a chance to, until he gets a shipping notice. So I told him that what I always do is I forget about Kickstarters until I get notice that they're coming in the mail. And then I look for them. But by ignoring that you ordered them, it's easier to not just be quivering with anticipation. I hope this game is good because we're gonna play it 10 times. And some of these games have not been great. We got Unstable Unicorns a couple years ago this way, and it was fine. Exploding Kittens was pretty good. It's easy to play that 10 times. It's very, very light, but for what it is, it's entertaining. So we'll see. Cafe Chaos is his other choice. Next up is my daughter. My daughter has wide-ranging and interesting taste. The issue for her is time. Being a freshman in high school, she's very busy. She has tons of homework. She's also a competitive swimmer, as you all know. And even though COVID has severely curtailed her practices, she's still managing to do 3 or 4 of those a week, which take up a lot of time. And then there's always, chatting on the phone with friends. So all those things together mean that she just doesn't have a lot of time for playing games with dear old dad or with the family. And then when she does feel like playing, she's not always... It just depends what she's in the mood. So this year, she picked a couple games. One, for Christmas, she got the Hogwarts Cup, Harry Potter, the Hogwarts Cup game. It is a worker placement game set in the Harry Potter universe. It looks pretty good, although it looks a little bland. The board looks a lot like the board from Pendulum, which if there's one thing I'm going to complain about Pendulum, it's that the board is really bland looking. And so I'm a little worried that the Harry Potter Hogwarts Cup challenge will be not great. We haven't tried it yet. So she did pick Sight Unseen, a game to throw on her 10 for 10. But yeah, we should get that tried this month, and that'll be a good test to see if it's going to be able to be something we can play 10 times. It probably is, even if it's just okay. The other game that she picked is a classic, one she says she hasn't played in a while, but one, frankly, I could just play endlessly. I think it's great. That's Seven Wonders, the Antoine Bauza classic drafting game where you're building a civilization. It's played in 3 phases. Each phase you get a different set of cards that builds off the last, and you build your tableau. It's excellent. Really solid game. Like I said, I could play that game over and over and over again. Never get tired of it, even if it's not my absolute favorite. And so I'm happy to have Seven Wonders be on our list. I have no doubt we can make it happen if I can get the other people to engage. But that said, I've played Seven Wonders many times. I'm not really expecting to find anything new in it myself. But what I am looking forward to is seeing how my wife and my daughter develop as Seven Wonders players over the course of the year. Because I know my daughter's played a couple times. I think my wife's played once, and she thought it was fine, but we haven't really played it much since then. So that means there's a lot of room for them to grow as players, and I mean, there's room for me to grow too, certainly. I've never been the best at it. I'm okay usually, but I'm excited to see how that evolves. So that's Seven Wonders, my daughter's second pick. All right, on to the 5th and 6th pick on our list. The 5th pick is once again a game added blindly. This is my Christmas gift for my wife in our game extravaganza Christmas party was Victoriana, which is probably, in retrospect, I think best called Pandemic meets League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, or with maybe a hint of Arkham Horror thrown in. Not Arkham Horror, the card game, but the original Arkham Horror. It feels a lot like that in terms of moving around the board, trying to resolve things through gathered resources. It is a puzzle game. You have this sort of constantly ticking clock that gets harder to solve as you're more successful, and as you're less successful, it gets easier. The rules seem more finicky than they are. It's a fairly complex rule set that once you get it in place, it's not that difficult. But it does make for an interesting puzzle. I feel like, at least we played it once, it feels like the enjoyment of the game is going to come from the variety of player characters you can use and the variety of villains and plots that you can encounter. Now the thing is, the villains show up in this sort of villain deck and you only face one at a time, and they don't really shape the experience of the game very much. Sometimes when people talk about games like Aeon's End, which I haven't played, or what's another one that might, I guess that's the one I'm thinking, or Spirit Island, when they talk about the change in a particular thing like a player power or an enemy, that the gameplay puzzle becomes very different. That isn't going to be the case in Victoriana. Each villain has its own thing it does, but you always solve the problem the same way, by defeating the villain by gathering the resources that they have. So in that way, it's more about like low-scale tactical manipulation of the system rather than broad strategic manipulation. I guess probably more akin in terms of the variety of challenge to something like the Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, which is a deck-building game where the game-by-game villains don't really change very much. There's a little bit of change here or there, but mostly it's going to be the same game each time with slightly different theme. I feel like, at least having played it once now, it will definitely survive 10 plays, but I wouldn't at all be surprised to see that we're ready to sell it at the end of that 10 plays. We'll see. Maybe it will grow on us. After one play, I'm not super convinced. We'll talk about that more when I give first impressions, shooting from the hip episode about that. The other game my wife picked is a Stefan Feld game, La Isla, which is a neat little puzzle game where you are putting out workers and trying to capture these animal tiles. And the animal tiles score in a couple different ways. You score points based on where the tiles are on the board. You score points every time you move up the score marker and the multiplier for those animals. And the more of them that you have, the more points you get. So if you have the frog, and if you have 2 of the frog tokens and you move the frog marker up, you score 2 points. And then At the end, you score based on the multiplier. So if you've moved the frog token up into the 3-point range, then you're going to get 3 points for every frog you have. It's an interesting game, very tactical. There's a little bit of strategy in terms of trying to figure out what you want to use, but the main core mechanism is multi-use cards. You get these cards that have 3 options on them. They have a special power, they have a resource they give you, or they have a score marker that they move up. And each round you have to pick one of the 3 to be a special power that you get, one of the 3 to give you resources, and one of the 3 to move the scoring marker. Then you do that, and you do it again and again and again, placing these pieces out on the board to try to grab pawns. Now I imagine as my wife and I play at this, we're going to get pretty good at it. I like its level of thought. I put it in the same category as something like Isle of Skye, maybe Baron Park, although it feels like you have a bit more control in Baron Park. You can plan better. This one's much more tactical based on the things you get. How do you use the things you get? Definitely relatively light. It'll be a good game to play with other people when they come over. Fun theme with these cute little animals, although the pieces are all kind of chintzy. Anyway, that's La Isla from Steffenfeld, the second of my wife's choices for our 10 for 10. All right, finally we have the 4 choices that I've picked. These are all games that you've heard me talk about before, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them, but I will give a quick run through. The first of these is Pandemic Legacy Season 0. This one's interesting. By putting it on my 10 for 10, I do prod us to play it monthly, or give or take monthly, rather than, I think Pandemic Legacy Season 2 took us like a year and a half, rather than the year that we did the Season 1 in. So I want to get back to that year, and I think that'll be doable, and putting it on the 10 for 10 helps motivate us there to do that. Another one that I put on there was Cartographers. Now this one might seem like a gimme. We played Cartographers a lot last year and a lot the year before. So if anything, the worry would be that we'd be losing steam on it. However, Thunderworks did a Kickstarter for the expansion, Cartographers Heroes, and I did back that. So sometime in the middle of the year, we should get the Cartographers Heroes expansion. And at that point, I expect to be able to get this back to the table on a regular basis. I think even without it, I probably could do that once a month. This is a game my wife and I really enjoy. It's fun to draw the maps. I win about 2/3 of the time, but she wins her share, and we have a good time with it. So that's Cartographers. The 2 games that are probably going to be hardest to get my 10 plays in are Nemo's War and Anachrony. So it might be strange to put Anachrony on here, since this is a game that I've had for years and I play somewhat regularly. I definitely haven't ever played it 10 times in a year. In fact, I would say I probably have played it 10 times total since I got it in 2017. I think 2017 is when it came. But the new Infinity Box just came out and just arrived, so I have a bunch of new expansion content that I want to play. And it's got a robust solo mode. So this is one of the games that I'm thinking I'm going to try to play once a month solo, even if I don't manage to get a shared game of it in. This would help me make sure that I'm able to get the game in, and would be fun to explore these different mechanisms. And there's also a new solo bot, the Chronosaurus or Chronosis or something like that, which looks delightful. Also, one of my pals who I play some of these Meteor games with is on sabbatical this year, and so he and I think, are going to play games in the middle of the year when we get a chance. So that's Anachrony. I'm really excited to play that. Also, I did get all the blinged out little bits. I got metal cubes, and I got plastic energy cores and resin tokens, and so my version of Anachrony is quite snazzy. My wife also got some crafty things to do as part of her Christmas gift. She was wanting to be a little bit more hands-on and crafty and stuff, and so I'm going to try to get those paint brushes out again, and after I get my painting eyes back, or my technique back a little bit, I think the Anachrony mini suits are going to be one of the first projects I tackle. Although I'm a little nervous to do that because they're so nice. I don't want to screw them up and make them look stupid. So we'll see if I'm able to muster the courage to paint them, or if they're just going to stay unpainted because it's so scary to paint them and maybe do it badly. There's some amazing paint jobs that people have done and posted online, and I'm a bit nervous to go up against those. And then the final choice that I have here is another game, and actually this one is entirely solo. I mean, I guess you can play it 2-player as a co-op game, but I bought it as a solo game. This is Nemo's War. Nemo's War is a game I've mentioned a few times. I played it a couple times and thought it was fun, but I haven't played it. I haven't given it the effort that I wanted to. One of the fun things about the game is it comes with a variety of goals. And those goals dramatically change what you're trying to do in the game. They give you a high incentive to pursue a different kind of experience. So part of what I'm looking to do is get back into the game and explore a variety of its features. Now, it does have a relatively high component of luck, so one of the things I'm looking forward to doing is figuring out how to mitigate that luck. This was a big part of learning to play Ghost Stories well. I think it'll be a big part of learning to play Nemo's War well. I will say the experience I've had with Nemo's War is pretty funny in that I've played it a couple times, and the first time I played particularly, I got something like 180 points. I think I got like 175 points, and I felt pretty good about that until I opened up the scoring guide to see how I'd done, and it said, below 180 points, you lose. So I got zero, I have 0 wins. I think I've played twice. So I'm looking forward to getting that back out, and I'm going to have to relearn the rules, so it'll be nice to play it 10 times this year, and then I won't have to, it'll be one of those games I won't have to relearn the rules a bunch of times. So that is Nemo's War, my last choice. So dear listeners, what games do you have on your personal challenges? I know I brought this up during the top of the stack, but I'm keen to hear what you are planning to play and how you're doing. I will give you my update so far. It is now January 11th. And my family and I have played 5 of our 100 games. So we are, 5% done, which is pretty good. So thanks for joining me today. If you have a thought about this, please reach out. Make a comment on Board Game Geek in the Guild 3269. That's the Pick Up and Deliver Guild. You can send me an email, wombat929, or drop me a line on an asynchronous gaming platform like Board Game Arena or Boîte à Jeux or Yucata. I am Wombat929 on any of those things, and I'd be happy to play pretty much any game you'd suggest. If I haven't played it before, I'll have to go read the rules, and generally in asynchronous play, I'm a bit of a doof on my first play, so you'll have to be forgiving of that, but otherwise, I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I'll see you next time. My son is waving at me in the window. It was kind of frightening, actually. So, thanks for joining me on my walk next time. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.